I think all the board members are here that are going to be here. So it's, I have 2 minutes till, but I'm going to go ahead and start. I call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Warwick, could you please take the roll?
Ms. Smits? Ms. Flynn?
Present.
Ms. Purdy?
Present.
Mr. Elstrom? Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Mr. Friesen? Chair Finn?
Present.
Mr. Rieger?
Present.
So there are 5 members present. Therefore, 4 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such an appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction began within 180 days of the variance effective date. Procedures for the meeting is that the case will be introduced and an overview given by staff. Applicant will present their request and reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board, and then if needed, staff will address the board again. The public hearing for case number VAR2017-018 for 2216 East Dartmouth Circle, Daniel Russell, is now open. The applicant is requesting a variance to exceed the maximum permitted height of 12 feet for an other accessory structure by 1 additional foot. This is a variance to Table 16-6-1.2 of the Englewood Municipal Code. I have verification of the publication and posting of the subject property. Staff?
I do. Harold Stitt, Senior Planner with the Department of Community Development. Good evening, Chair Flynn and board members. Tonight we have a case brought forward as a result of a complaint filed with the city about a structure being built in the rear yard at 2216 East Dartmouth Circle. The nature of the complaint was that it appeared to the complainant that it might be a residential structure. And currently the city does not permit ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We investigated the situation and discovered that, in fact, it was an accessory structure, which is a permitted use in that zone district, but it had failed to go through a site plan review process with the Department of Community Development. As a result, the options were to, and we discovered that the height of the structure was 1 foot over the maximum height of 12 feet for an other accessory structure. The options at that point were for the owners of the property to reduce the height of the structure or apply for a variance. And as a result of that conversation with the applicants, they've decided to apply for a variance. There are a couple of photographs, aerial photographs, that show you the location of the property relative to the boundary line between Denver and Englewood. Denver is on the north side. This is East Columbia Place, and wraps around this portion of Englewood with houses on either side of East Dartmouth Circle. 2216 East Dartmouth Circle is the property outlined in yellow. The specific structure is located in the northeast corner of the property. This is a blow-up of that same property to give you a sense of what the area is like. It's a lot of mature landscaping. There are boundary fences that run along this common municipal boundary between Denver and Englewood. The site plan for this property shows that the shed is located outside of easements that are located both on the north property line and on the east property line. In all ways except for the height of the structure, it complies with our zoning regulations in terms of setback and area. This is a photograph of the structure as it was in September when we were notified that there was a complaint at this location. I'll go back to that. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this point.
So for an other accessory structure, the setbacks are 5 foot from the back and 5 foot from the side.
That's correct.
What's the difference between a shed and an other accessory structure?
The other accessory structure provision was added to the code quite a while ago to address non-storage shed type structures. A pergola, there were elevated playhouses in some cases, and over the years that has morphed into a variety of different structures. Since there's no specific definition for other accessory structure, it's come to include anything that isn't a garage or strictly a shed. And the dimensions that are allowed for other accessory structures vary slightly from sheds. You're allowed a maximum number of 1 on each property. The maximum height for a storage shed is 10 feet. The maximum height for the other accessory structure is 12 feet. As the chair indicated, the setbacks are in the R1A zone district, where this property is located. There's 5 feet both for the side and the rear, and then the maximum square footage is 200 square feet. The differences there really boil down to the maximum height of 12 feet versus 10, and the maximum total floor area, 200 square feet for an other accessory structure, and 150 square feet for a storage shed.
Does the board have any other questions for staff at this point? I have another question. Could you flip back to the overhead photo? The bigger one. So the red line is Denver.
Correct. Denver is on the north side here and also on the west. The boundary line comes down to East Dartmouth Avenue. So all these properties in here are in the city and county of Denver. This property is located on East Dartmouth Circle. Just for reference purposes, the street here is East Dartmouth Avenue, and over here in the wood paneling would be University Boulevard. So it's adjacent to the Joshua School, which is this property.
So referencing the email that we got that's in opposition, that's from the Cherry Hills Vista Community Association.
Correct.
And that's, though, actually City of Denver?
Yes, that's a registered neighborhood association in the city of Denver that covers, East Columbia Place. I don't know the exact boundaries of that, but I believe it probably goes a fair distance north on University and then farther west of University.
And are you somewhat familiar with the City of Denver, their regulations for storage sheds?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. It's my understanding that they don't have a height requirement per se. Can you confirm that? Or
I cannot, I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't have, if anyone else questions?
Are we aware of any restrictions or boundaries next to the next to the power lines or telephone lines?
No. The structure is actually placed outside of the easements for utilities. There's a 5-foot easement on the north side and also on the east side. And I think you can see that on the site plan. This line right here indicates the 5-foot utility easement across the north of the property. Likewise, this line indicates the 5-foot utility easement on the east side. The shed is well outside of those easement areas.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Stitt. May the applicant please come forward to testify in this case. Please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that you would tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do. My name is Dan Russell, 2216 East Dartmouth Circle, Englewood, Colorado.
And Mr. Russell, so we've gotten your information that you gave us, but do you have anything other to add why you should be granted this variance?
Why what?
Should be granted this variance?
Well, it's only a foot. I didn't realize it was going to be quite that steep of a roof, but then after I looked at the plans and after we got it started, yeah, the roof was that steep. In order to maintain the integrity, the look of the building, everything about it, the roof has to be that steep. And if I cut it down, it won't look very nice. It'll be an ugly shed. And the reason for that part of it being accessory is part of that is a garden shed where we'll be doing potting and stuff for the yard. We do quite a bit of that because of the size of the yard.
Does the board have questions for the applicant?
If you'd been aware that the height of the structure was going to exceed what was allowed, would you have designed it to be 13 feet?
Yes, I would have.
Okay.
I went in and I looked and I said, oh, I don't need a permit to build this. So that's as far as I looked. Bad on me. I was wrong. Then once they told me, I went down and got it all passed.
And I'm assuming this is a kit, or was it designed, or how does?
It's a plan that I got online.
Okay.
And me and my friend were just putting it together. We're just kind of two old 70-year-old guys, and we're out there just putting the shed together.
Were you able to determine the placement of the shed with the easements online, or how did you know exactly where to place it? Did you get lucky that you fell within the 5 feet?
If you looked at the picture they showed, there was 2 trees back there. We took those trees out because they were just getting way too big and too old. So we had this big open spot. And we had I had 2 choices. And I was overruled on my choice and went over in the corner. Didn't realize the massiveness and the closeness of the neighbor's house.
So, if by chance, I see that there's a concrete slab that's been poured. And if by chance you're not granted a variance, do you think you would just move the structure, or do you think you would try to cut it down? Because it's...
I'll probably have to wind up cutting it down, and it's going to look horrible.
Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Russell. I think that's all we have for you. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? Please come forward. If you could please state your name and address to be sworn in by the secretary.
Do you swear or affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes.
State your name and address.
Rita Russell, 2216 East Dartmouth Circle.
So you're also the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I really didn't necessarily want to speak, but I did go to the neighbors behind us in Denver, and I went on a couple of occasions.
Could we, Mr. Sitz, could we go back to the overhead, the large overhead? Yeah, you can point possibly what neighbors you're speaking about.
2260, the neighbors at 2260, which are Mike and Nancy Flanagan. I had met them before on a couple of occasions, but I went to speak with Nancy. She was home the day I went over there after I found out about the complaint from the city attorney. And according to the complaint, they were complaining that it was a tiny home or something like that. And when I went to talk to her, I said, I think there's been some misunderstanding. It is a garden shed. Part of it will be used for storage. Part of it will be used for a potting area. It is well under the 150 square feet. It's 120 square feet totally. And when I told her that it was not going to be a dwelling, she was very relieved. I mean, we went out into her backyard. She gave me some oregano. I went home, and I thought everything was fine. So I went over there again after my husband got the packet to give her a copy, and I spoke with her husband, and he looked at the form, and I said, if you'll fill this out, we will, take it with us. Informed him of the hearing. And he said, okay. I gave him my contact information, so it's quite a ways around. So I said, if you just call me, I'll meet you at the fence. So last night he met me at the fence, and he actually, when I gave it to him, he says, so if I check this won't be good for you. And I said, well, whatever you choose to do is fine. And so when I met him at the fence last night, it was in a sealed envelope. So I figured it probably wasn't necessarily in our favor. And after reading the complaint from the Homeowners Association.
So you have not seen this? Because the envelope, when I received it, was sealed, so I'm assuming you did not open up the envelope?
No. And I assumed when I read the thing from Cherry Hills Vista that it was very similar. Right.
If you would like to take a look at it, since you have not seen it, if you want to look at it, just to. Just to let you know what was in it. So.
All right, and that's fine. I assumed when I saw the letter from the Homeowners Association that it was probably something similar. I didn't necessarily want to give it to you, but I thought, I saw that. It's probably similar. So, because I'm sure it wasn't in favor of our case. However, we do not live in the Homeowners Association. We live in Englewood. We chose to live in Englewood because there aren't such stringent areas, and what we have done, I think probably the building codes or whatever need to be more user-friendly for citizens. I think my husband found that he did not have to get a building permit if the structure was over 200 square feet. It was well under that. And so we weren't trying to do anything. But, and the truth is, the shed is my fault. We'd been talking for years about building a shed, and Handyman magazine came a year ago, and on the front page was the shed. And I said to my husband, I want that shed. So in that letter that we just looked at, they're not happy with the placement. They're not going to be happy with us just cutting a foot off, because it's still going to look that big to them, because it's only the peak. And actually, my husband did measure the distance from the fences. The fence, I'm not sure that the fence on the very back corner here is inset about a foot from the rest of the fence. So I think that at some point in time, those fences belong to the property owners in Denver. They're not partly ours. They've all been replaced since we've lived there. We've lived there 22 years. We're asking for a variance. It would be easier for us. It's not going to make any difference to them. And the truth is, we cannot move the shed. It would be too cost prohibitive.
Does the board have any questions?
Because it didn't come as a kit, are you guys going to match the picture that was provided?
Yes. If it does not match that perfectly, I will be very upset with my husband. Actually, I will be staining it myself. I can do that.
And you've read the letter. Do you have anything to add to the letter?
I do not.
Okay. And there's no other questions from the board? Thank you, Mrs. Russell.
I just have one other
Yes.
statement. It is a little bit troublesome to me that originally the complaint only involved the fact that it was a living structure, and now that it's been changed, they've changed their complaint too. So.
Right, and I can understand that concern, but the problem is it's against the code.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah, and even though it was reported for something else, but I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Russell.
Thank you.
Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of the request? No one is here. Does staff have any additional comments? No. Does the board have any additional questions for staff? I do. And I don't know if you would have an answer to this or not. But the Cherry Hills Vista Community Association, do you know if they vary from the City of Denver code at all?
I don't believe so. In the staff report, it indicated what the zoning was from that area. And while I don't have that information in front of me, that particular zone district is not unique to that neighborhood. Denver has a very complicated zoning scheme, and they identify zoning based on essentially the character of neighborhoods. So the zoning that is in the area adjacent to the Russell's property also shows up in various places in Denver, and I don't believe that the regulations change.
Okay.
The homeowners association or the registered neighborhood association really doesn't have any say in changing the zoning regulations other than through an amendment process as anyone would have.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Stitz. The public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion?
I move that case VAR 2017-018 be granted a variance to exceed the maximum permitted height of 12 feet for an other accessory structure by 1 additional foot at 2216 East Dartmouth Circle, Englewood.
Do I have a second? Thoughts?
Candid, this one's tough.
I'm struggling with the first criteria about unique physical conditions. In terms of the pitch of the roof, that's not necessarily something that's unique to the subject property.
I agree with that. To me, and why I ask staff, and I guess the interesting piece that sticks in my mind is this property backs up against the City of Denver's property. And I think that makes it unique in a little bit of a way, because it's my understanding, and I would love to have clarification of this as a problem, is that the City of Denver, you can have a storage shed that is taller than 8 feet, but then it requires a building permit. So suddenly, the neighbors that you back up to could build this storage shed in their backyard, and it would be okay. But yet, because this person's an Englewood resident, they can't build it. And to me, that goes against a little bit some of the argument of what's allowed in the neighborhood. But that's kind of just how I see one. I also, as some of these other cases we've had before, I also have a problem with 4.
Yeah.
Is that, I understand he didn't know about the code, but he got himself into this situation.
So taking Denver out of it, they got lucky and they were within every single setback.
Absolutely, right.
Except for 1 foot.
Right.
So that's the tough part about it. It's 1 foot. And it's pretty. It's not like it's an ugly shed in the back of someone's house that I have seen.
I agree. And while each case is different, and there's a set of facts that go with every case, we had a contractor who built a garage that was, I think, within 1 foot, and he was in a setback, which to me is was he a setback or was it a height?
It was a setback. Side setback.
Besides the height. So yeah, I mean I agree. I think I'm a fan of a good-looking shed, and it's a good-looking shed and planting area, garden planting area.
I'm going to leverage the board's experience. I was thinking about safety, it being an occupied shed for the sale of future residents that buy that property. Since it's a plan that's being built not off a plan, and there is going to be a snow load on it, is that a concern?
According to the city, it's not a concern because it's a concern, but it doesn't have to go through to get a building permit because it's under the square footage. So this would be a little bit
different.
A little bit different, a little bit of buyer beware, perhaps.
But on the same token, if he cuts it down 1 foot, then it's no longer built the way it is engineered and could be a safety issue.
Correct. snow load would increase dramatically.
That's true. And I guess that would go to, how do you cut it down? How would he proceed to cut it down? I mean, by decreasing the slope of the roof that much, you're not going to affect really shedding snow load. I mean, to me, that's not a big factor. But the way it's built, suddenly now you're going to get into, they're not pre-engineered trusses and all that, but you are going to be changing some of the angles. I agree. I think this is tough. I think that, to me, the question, again, I get hung up on 4. But as we've had some of these cases before, if he hadn't built it and he came to us to get a variance, or even if, say, he says, you know what, I'm going to move it, he's still going to be a foot over, and he'd have to get a variance. So he'd come to us and say, hey, I'm going to put it here. I want a foot variance. Before he built it, would I grant a variance for that? And I'm not sure, if that makes sense. Do you guys have any other, do you want to discuss it anymore, or do you want to just vote?
I have trouble with 4 also. And I'm also thinking if we have a 12-foot height limit on a building like this and we give a variance, there could be any number of people on Dartmouth Circle then asking for the same variance.
I agree. I think it's...
That's my problem.
I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult because of the kind of structure it is.
It's really cute, too.
Any other discussion?
I just think the struggle we're having is being confined to these criteria that we have to decide this on, and there seem to be other factors about the appearance and these other things, but we're pretty constrained about what we have to be able to consider in terms of especially the 4th criteria.
I do believe if it were 12 foot, that it wouldn't make a difference to the neighbors.
Just say that again, please.
If the structure were 12 foot, I believe the impact to the neighbors would still be the same. I believe the 1 foot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that the impact to the neighbors would be the same. But I think the thing that we're tasked with is trying to, as Mr. Taylor said, fit it in our 4 criteria.
Yeah, we're definitely not voting to make the neighbors happy. No, that's not part of our...
No, that isn't the 5th.
It's requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Let's vote.
Ms. Flynn?
Unfortunately, I voted no. The first criteria, that it's a unique physical condition, does not exist. The second criteria about public health, safety, and welfare, unfortunately, due to the height, that could be a welfare issue for the surrounding neighbors. The third criteria, variance will not permanently impair the use or development of the adjacent and conforming properties. That one's fine. And then the fourth criteria, that it's not self-imposed. Unfortunately, a phone call to the city instead of and what we all do, going online and assuming we can find everything we need, would have solved this financial hardship now that they could come upon. So for those reasons, unfortunately, I voted no.
Ms. Purdy?
I voted no for the same reasons as stated by Mrs. Flynn.
Mr. Taylor?
I voted no for the same reasons as previously stated.
Mr. Rieger?
I voted for. I found it in line with the criteria after the explanation from the building owner.
Chair Finn?
I voted no, somewhat for the reasons stated. I think it does possibly pass the first criterion that the lot backs up to the city of Denver, where it's questionable that they, I believe, could build something like this. So I think that when you have a lot next to a lot in that condition, it is somewhat unique. The thing that really tripped me up was I had a hard time getting over the hurdle of the fourth criterion that the variance is not self-imposed.
Motion fails 1-4.
Thank you. Approval of minutes from...
There was one item for the first motion. It says that I had seconded, but I was out of the room. So
Right.
I'm not sure who seconded that one, but that would be not me. The vote is correct that I abstained. So I don't know if are there some notes on who.
We do with Ms. Flynn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So with that correction, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move the Board of Adjustment Appeals meeting Wednesday, October 11th minutes are approved.
I second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. And we have one abstention. Mr. Rieger, who is not present. Approval of finding of fact from Wednesday, October 11th, 2017. There's no issues. Is there a motion?
I move the findings of fact from October 11th in the matter of case VAR 2017-016 be approved.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor say aye.
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 I'll abstain since I abstained from that vote as well. Public hearing.
Any opposed? All right. There were two abstentions from that. Staff's choice.
There will be one variance case in the month of December.
Are you going to bring us the easier ones, or are we going to have to continue to break people's hearts? City Attorney Dugan.
Nothing further to add.
Thank you, sir. Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Ms. Warwick, do you have anything for us? The board, do anyone here have anything?
I just have maybe some questions about the site plan review process when there's not a building permit. We've had two in a row that just haven't gone through that. I'm just wondering if there's anything with that process that can be, help get people to go through that so they don't end up
Close
here.
the meeting before we have this discussion.
Sure.
Well, that's board members'
Yes,
choice.
let's close.
Yeah,
That's board members' choice.
board member's choice.
Otherwise, I can answer that.
No, I think it's an open discussion. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have gone online because we have a garage which is leaning, so you don't park in it. I've gone online to see what my shed requirements are because that's all we want to do is tear it down, put up another one.
I found out online that I don't need a permit, but I need to bring a little drawing to the city. It did not take hard. And then I called, and a very nice man answered the phone, confirmed what I read, and explained it to me in layman's terms. It was not difficult.
It's not difficult, but I think the concern is, especially since we've had 2 cases, you work somewhat in the construction industry. I would not disagree with that. But is there, I think, and I thought about this somewhat today for the same thing. If anything, to make my life easier as the board meeting, and to not drag Dugan here on Wednesday if he doesn't have to be here.
Well, I was sick last time, so that's why I was not here.
I'm just saying that if we don't have to have a meeting, but I don't know if there's any kind of publication or something that we could put a reminder in. They send out the Englewood newsletter.
If you're going to put concrete on your property, you better call someone to make sure you're doing it right, because whatever's going on top of it is expensive and can't be moved easy.
Yeah.
This was not a cheap kit that she bought, because I know how much it costs.
I agree with that, but
My shed at Home Depot was not this.
But is there anything we can and staff, if you have anything to throw in it,
Seriously, put a blurb. If you pour concrete,
right?
better call somebody before you do it.
But there's a lot of people that there's a lot of people that don't think that way.
Because they think that it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
So I didn't know if there was any possibility of adding occasionally to the Englewood newsletter a blurb saying, before you do any construction, just check with the city.
And they don't consider it construction, so you just need to see any alterations, any modifications.
Yeah.
Because they don't think that pergola was construction.
And maybe that's something I can take up with the city. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing that we could, I've kicked around and we could maybe talk to staff about is that what I would love to see is that when someone does turn in a site plan or anything like that, is maybe there's a form with it that they sign and they say, I have read and I understand all the applicable code. And then it's a little bit on them. Because the other thing I hate is that I know the city has so much to do and at times it slips through the city fingers, but if you have that form that someone signs, it also puts the onus back on this person that it didn't just slip through the city. They should have known, and they were trying to slip it by the city. Just my thoughts. Is that?
It was just sort of an open question, so.
Yeah. No, I think it's. I think it's worth thinking about. If there's something we could do, I just don't know. Yeah. I have no desire to go door to door.
No.
And preach this. Is there anything else from you? What?
Sounds awful. I wouldn't volunteer for that.
Staff, when would we know if there's going to be a January case?
We will know the 1st of December if there's going to be a January.
So we will know before the next meeting.
Correct.
So Sue is about to be term limited. I believe your last meeting would be.
Can't wait, can you?
I believe your last meeting would be January.
I think so.
So I would just like everyone to keep that in the back of their mind. And that's all I have. So if anyone has nothing else?
I do
All right.
have something to say, but let's close the meeting.
All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
I just want to know if anybody is interested in a Christmas dinner this year. Wait, you didn't, the only